Hello, and welcome to Eternal Joy MCC. We are an LGBTQ plus Christ-affirming church located in the heart of downtown Dayton, Ohio. For over 40 years, Eternal Joy has served the greater Dayton, Ohio region, and now we have partnered with the Greater Dayton LGBTQ Center. The LGBTQ Center address is 24 North Jefferson St, Dayton, Ohio 45402. And we are located on the second floor. We have our services at the LGBT Center on Sundays at 1:30 p.m. and we invite you to join us. All are welcome. Metropolitan Community Churches was founded by Reverend Troy Perry, an openly gay man who was let go as a Pentecostal pastor in the early 1960s when he came out about his sexuality. Reverend Troy Perry settled in Los Angeles, California, where he had a renewed sense of spirituality. He then founded Metropolitan Community Churches in the 1968, which started with a group of 12 people in his living room, and now there are over 172 churches worldwide. If you would like to know more about our church, please visit our website, www.eternaljoymccdayton.com. There you'll be able to find all our upcoming events and more. If you would like to donate to our church, the link is in the description box below. Thank you, and God bless you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Our text today comes from the book of Jeremiah. I thought I would read a little bit about the history behind the book of Jeremiah, because I think Eternal Joy MCC, us as a whole, us as a church, and us as individuals can learn a lot from this story. The prophet Jeremiah can reassure us and teach us the value of endurance during a time of uncertainty. This book, although filled with cries and lamentations, has hope at its center. Let's go back in time, shall we? The purpose of this book was to turn the people of Israel back to God and to get them to trust God again. It was written approximately between 627 to 586 BC. Jeremiah ministered under Judah's last 5 kings before they were eventually conquered by Babylon in 586 BC. This was a tumultuous time for the people of Israel. The book is a combination of history, poetry, and biography, and the prophet uses a lot of symbolism to communicate his message. Jeremiah was the son of a Jewish priest. The difficulties he encountered, as described in the books of Jeremiah and Lamentations, have inspired scholars to call him the weeping prophet. Jeremiah was called to prophecy in 626 BC by God to proclaim Jerusalem's coming destruction by invaders from the north. This was because Israel had forsaken God by worshiping the idols that were attributed to Baal, a Canaanite deity, by burning their children as offerings to Baal. The nation had deviated so far from God's laws that they had broken the covenant, causing God to withdraw his blessings. Jeremiah was guided by God to proclaim that the nation of Judah would suffer famine, foreign conquest, plunder, and captivity in a land of strangers. This is the backstory of our Old Testament text for today. Endurance. Endurance is not a common quality. A lot of people in our world lack long-term commitment, caring, and willingness to stick with a task against all odds. But Jeremiah was a prophet who endured. Jeremiah's call by God shows us how intimately God knows us. It even mentions this in the beginning of the book when God is talking to Jeremiah. Jeremiah 1 verse 5 says, "Before I formed you." You know that one? "Before I formed you and before you were born, I consecrated you. I appointed you a prophet to the nations." God knows everything about us. Our strengths, our weaknesses, the areas in our life that we all need to grow. And God has been with all of us every step of the way throughout our journeys. God has placed circumstances and people in our paths at the right place at the right time to bring us where we need to be. Even during times when we are unsure about our surroundings and we're unsure about what the future may hold, and things look bleak and things look impossible and things keep us frustrated, God is still there with us, holding our hand and paving the way for us. And you know what? I believe, much like Jeremiah, there is a spirit of endurance in our church. I believe that. I think we should be proud of ourselves. Despite our issues, despite our uncertainties, I think we should be proud of who we are, considering where we've been, all that we've gone through, the way our world is right now, the way things are, how uncertain things are. But we also must not forget to depend on God to show us the way. Jeremiah had learned to depend on God's love as he learned to develop endurance. His audiences were not always receptive to what he had to say. Many times he was ignored. His life was often threatened. He saw both excitement and spiritual awakening and the sorrow of witnessing his own people abandon God time and time again. With the exception of a good King Josiah, Jeremiah watched king after king ignore the warnings and lead the people away from God. He saw his fellow prophets murdered. He himself was severely persecuted and imprisoned. And at last he saw Judah's defeat at the hands of the Babylonians. Jeremiah responded to all this with his faithfulness to God and his sadness because of the love he had for his people. He felt firsthand God's love for God's people and many times witnessed the rejection of that love. But even when he was angry, even when he was scared, even when he was uncertain and tempted to give up, he knew he had to keep on going. God had called him to endure, just as God has called all of you individually to endure. And just as God has called Eternal Joy as a church as a whole to endure. Despite the fact that we are in a unique situation, an unconventional situation. Jeremiah expressed his intense feelings and honesty, but he also saw beyond those feelings and the temporary situation that he and his people were in. Jeremiah looked to a God who was soon to execute justice, but who afterward would administer mercy. Yes, it may be easy for us to identify with Jeremiah's frustrations and discouragement, but we need to realize that this prophet's life is also a testimony to the encouragement of faithfulness to God. It is true that in our text this morning, that in spite all of our learning and growth, there will be a time to rejoice. There will be a time to laugh again. There will be a time where it feels like we have come home, even though it may not feel that way right now. This weekend, Johnny and I went on a 2-day trip. We went on a little vacation to Lake Erie in Cleveland. When I was a child, my dad had a sailboat that he kept up there. He still has a sailboat and sails at 78 years old, which I think is very impressive. Only he does it in Florida. I spent a lot of my childhood at Lake Erie, so Johnny and I visited some of the old restaurants and places I used to go to. Some are still there, some are not. Johnny loves Christmas because he was not allowed to celebrate it as a child. So we visited... Yeah, you saw that. We visited the house in Cleveland where they filmed A Christmas Story with Ralphie. I also had to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I've been there before, but it was like 25 years ago. On the way back, we were listening to music, and we were listening to all kinds of music on the way back. And this text of hope that promises the Israelites and all else who read it, regardless of their circumstance, that everything will be set right. The text and a song that we were listening to reminded me of the text for this afternoon. It's an old song that was recorded by many, including Elvis. I have the Elvis version that we're going to listen to. There will be peace in the valley. Do you know that one? Much like the prophet Jeremiah, it assures the listener that God will restore the faithful. It gives hope. And I believe we as a church are on the right track, even though things seem up in the air right now. We do have things we got to work on. We got to work on our communication with one another. We got to work on our faithfulness to God. But I think we are on the right track. I believe we will get there, and I believe God will get us there, and I believe God is getting us there now. So sit tight, but also be diligent and faithful, and know that God will work wonders for you and our church. Amen.